And welcome back, footy fans, to another episode of Donnie's Disposals. I am your host, Coach Donnie Hess, here, back with another, sadly, the bittersweet time of the year. The VFL and VFLW are over. We have two premiers we need to discuss, we need to talk about, we need to review what has gone on since the last time I have talked with my amazing co-host, Mr. Brendan Jonty Rhodes. Brendan, it is great to see you, sir. We have two premiers, a men's and a women's premiers, that have been crowned since the last time that you and I have talked.
It's always a pleasure, Donny. Great having a chat. And at the end of what was a remarkable season where most results were never set in stone, as often happens, the best two teams ended up winning the premierships.
Mhm.
The North Melbourne Werribee got the job done in the VFLW, the best team all year. Suffered an upset in the early stages of the finals, but came back and won a tight one, and then Footscray on a 15-match winning streak. Unfortunately for Southport, for the third time in 4 years, they managed to break the Sharks' hearts again and take their first flag in 9 years.
Yep. So it was incredible. So let's break it down how everything went through. We will start with the women's, go all the way through to the crowning of the North Melbourne Werribee Kangaroos, and then we'll go through the men's finals, which I cannot wait for this. So we'll start off, we'll go back. The first week of the finals we saw the Williamstown Seagulls get a win over the Sandy Zebras 18-6. The Box Hill Hawks knock off Essendon by one, 29-28. And as my co-host said in his preview, Collingwood with the upset of the finals, knocking off North Melbourne Werribee in the first round of the finals, 45-32. I mean, a 1 point thriller and an upset. What an incredible way to start off this women's final series.
It absolutely was, and the loss of the Kangaroos to the Magpies, well, it almost knocked me off my chair when I saw it. I
You
didn't
and
get a
me
chance
both.
to
I
see the
messaged you. I remember messaging you going, Did seriously, did this just happen?
Yeah, the amazing thing is, earlier on in the season, Collingwood did beat North Melbourne Werribee, and they beat them by about the same margin. Uh, but that was on Victoria Park. This one was on Arden Street in a final. When it just seemed strange that how some teams just seem to match up pretty well against other ones, and this is obviously the case because as talented as the Collingwood team is, they shouldn't be beating this North Melbourne Werribee team because they are as good a women's team at state league level as I've seen in a long time, and they blew them away in the second quarter, 4 goals to 1, gave themselves a 25-point lead at halftime, and then from there it was just hold things at bay. They only scored once in the second half with a goal, but that was all they needed, and they went straight through to the second semi-final in this weird finals setup that the top six is. I'll tell everyone that wants to listen, there's no such thing as a fair top six. Um, and so Collingwood's now playing for a spot in the grand final, and the Kangaroos have got to run the gauntlet of 3 sudden death games if they want to defend their flag.
Well, let's move on to the next round where we see Collingwood staple themselves into a grand final, knocking off Box Hill 41-16, and North Melbourne take their anger out on Williamson with a 41-17 point win over the Seagulls. So, I mean, both the teams that you would expect to win this round both came out victorious.
They did, and the interesting thing about that final series is that Box Hill, after coming from behind and pinching that 1 point victory over Essendon in an elimination final, found themselves with a double chance
hmm
and the opportunity to go straight into a grand final. The Magpies were far too good in this one. The Hawks didn't kick a goal until the last quarter. The best players for Collingwood stood up. The captain, Dom Carboni, 26 disposals and a goal. Lawrence Seghetti, their most experienced player, had 21, and their young gun, Talia Sanger, had 20. Amelia Peck kicked 4 against North Melbourne Werribee. She was held to 1, but it didn't really matter. The Hawks tried hard, but just didn't have the answers only the top ball winner was Isla Baldwin and Rosie Dillon with 19, so they just couldn't get their hands on the footy enough. And in the other one, yeah, Williamstown. Well, at one stage, we were fearful that they wouldn't even score against the Kangaroos. They actually put their first score on the board halfway through the third quarter, and by then North Melbourne Werribee was well and truly off and gone, and they kicked 4-17 the
Mm-hmm.
Kangaroos to 2-5. So this could have been a real beat down rather than the 24 points it turned out to be.
Yeah, it made it a little bit closer than it probably should have been, but sometimes the little mercies of life, we will say that. Let's go on preliminary final as we see North Melbourne continue its reign of destruction through this play these sudden death games, beating Box Hill by 21, 62-41. Again, North Melbourne Werribee, they were on a mission to get to a grand final and get a rematch with Collingwood.
Yeah, game over at quarter time once again here. 4 goals to 1 in the opening quarter for the Kangaroos. And it started right from the start. Couple of chances early for the Hawks. They kicked a couple of points to get things underway. But then the Kangaroos just went bang, bang, bang. 2 goals, 1 in the space of about 3 minutes. And they never looked back. They led by 16 points at quarter time, 24 at halftime. The Hawks fought hard. They got themselves back to within 12, but they were never going to chase the Kangaroos down. And another 2 goals to 1 in the last quarter made it quite comfortable. Nike DeJock with a couple of goals. Alana Barber, 29 disposals for North Melbourne Werribee, and Maddie DeCosmo, their best 2 midfielders. She had 22. Annabelle Embleton had 22 for the Hawks, a good solid effort. But I think the best 2 teams made the grand final, even though the Kangaroos had to come the long way around under this final series.
And it definitely led to a fantastic one as we go on to the grand final. And as we said earlier, North Melbourne Werribee get the back-to-back in an absolute classic as it takes a Stella Reid goal with a few minutes left on the clock to put the Roos up as a back and forth game. The Pies took the North starts off at the lead. The Pies kick a couple of goals, a back and forth game, but the Roos pulling off late, get the win, back to back premiers. North Melbourne Werribee, an incredible end to this particular AFLW season.
Yeah, it was definitely the Roos looked like they were on a mission. They kicked 3 goals to 1 in the opening quarter, total command of the contest. But then it just turned around again, and the Collingwood belief of having beaten North Melbourne Werribee twice throughout the course of the season, it came back in the second quarter. They kicked 2 goals, 1 to 2 points. They had the lead by halftime, they were level by halftime. And then they edged ahead in the third quarter. Taylor Christensen was very important up forward with a couple of goals. Nike DeJook again and Stella Reid, of course, kept North Melbourne in it. But 2 points down at three-quarter time, it was anybody's game. There was a big crowd there, which did surprise me a little bit, given they changed the grand final from a Sunday to a Saturday at the last minute, which meant it clashed with the first week of VFL finals. But the women's football supporters really got behind it, which was fantastic to see, and they definitely proved me wrong. It was outstanding, and then just a really tight contest. Collingwood spent a lot of the time in the last quarter in their forward zone, but the Kangaroos just wouldn't let them score, and they battled the Roos. They kicked a couple of points, they got themselves level, and then just under 5 minutes to go, Reid, who is a regular defender, swooped on a loose ball at the front of the pack, snapped the goal on her left foot, gave them a 6-point lead, and they were able to hold on after that, and so she will go down as a hero. She'll never forget that, kicking the winning goal in a grand final. But she did kick 3 for the game. She had nine disposals, 5 tackles, and 3 goals, which was a crucial contribution. but I don't think anyone could question who the Lisa Hardiman medalist was, and that was the superstar Alana Barber, who is one of those players that you sit back and think, how is she not on an
The
AFLW
list.
list?
Hmm.
She's an absolute star. This is her second Lisa Hardiman medal. She won it playing for Essendon in 2022. And on this occasion, 35 disposals, 19 kicks, 16 handballs, 3 marks, 13 tackles as well.
Hmm.
So, with and without the ball, she was absolutely imperious, Alana Barber. And to tell you, to split the difference of it, the second best player on the ground, the Collingwood captain, Dom Carboni, had 22 touches. So 13 less than Alana Barber did. And
Hmm.
Carboni was the clear second best on ground. And we're not just talking about disposals, we're talking about impact as well.
Hmm.
These two tough midfielders just burrow in and they get it done. And yeah, they are fantastic players who really deserve a chance again at the top level. Feel for Dom Carboni. She captained the Western Bulldogs last year when they lost to North Melbourne in the grand final. She switched to Collingwood this year, was named captain, and once again she had to stand up on the stage and give the runners-up speech, which I've never had to do, but I'd imagine it would be absolute agony for her. So
Hmm.
spare a thought for her. But this North Melbourne Werribee team was the best team all year, quite comfortably, and a very thoroughly deserving premier.
Definitely, for sure. So that we will tie that up with a bow. We will finish it off. We'll kind of wrap up the women's round just the littlest bit. Let's jump over to the men's because a fascinating one that I have to say, really kind of, except for a few blips, I had to feel good because there were a couple of calls that I made that I had to cheekily little grin when I saw the result. Let's jump right through it to the wild card round where we see Richmond start off the finals with a win over GWS 116-98, and Williamstown also get a win by 12, 81-69. So the wild card round, here's where I'm going to go with this really, really quickly. I know 2 wins, both by 3 goals or less. But this is, I think, going to be the precipice for the AFL because I know the AFL is really talking about this wild card round as somebody again, there's 21 teams, so this makes a little bit more sense in the VFL. What do you
Yes,
think of this wild card round? Because honestly, is this a scintillating round of footy? Yes, I think it is. Both games are within 3 goals, but when it comes to it, it is purely on the fact that there are 21 teams in the VFL. This kind of has to play out the way it does.
exactly right. And that's why I'm in favour of it in the VFL, because there are so many teams, and it was a really good weekend with two pretty decent crowds, two really good games of footy, and it really whet the appetite for what was to come in the rest of the final series. At this stage, I'm against it in the AFL
I
simply
agree.
because 10 out of 18 doesn't quite,
Compute.
even though this year there was the 9 absolute clear standouts and the 10th team was clearly 10th.
Hmm.
That doesn't happen very often. That does not happen very often. Usually there's a team falling into eighth, or when they're finishing ninth or 10th, they're not quite good enough. Um, on this occasion, it would have worked, and that's why they're talking about it. But
Yeah.
at VFL level, it took 10 wins out of 18. So you had to win more games than you lost to make the
Hmm.
finals. You had to finish in the top half of the ladder, which is the way it absolutely turned out.
Hmm.
Coburg in 11th, feel for them, but they were 9-9.
Yeah.
They would have been 10-8 if not for a pretty ordinary umpiring decision earlier on in the year, and they would have made and they would have made the finals. They
Yep.
10-8, they would have made the finals because they had a better percentage than Williamstown. But
The way it
yeah,
goes.
until Tasmania comes in, until Tasmania Devils come in 2028 into the AFL, I say no.
Yep.
When they
Mm.
do, when they do,
Yep.
you can make an argument for 10 out of 19 a lot better than you can make an argument for 10 out of 18. So that
100% with you.
that's where I see it. And if and when the 20th team comes in, which really should be the Northern Territory Thunder,
I agree.
then definitely then I would be in favour of
Of
a
the
top
wild
10.
card. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's what we really should call it, is not a top 6 and a wild card. It's a top 10 because they are sudden death finals.
Yep.
And that's exactly what they are. I know they're called wild cards over there, but they are sudden death games, so they are finals. They're
Yep.
playoffs.
Yep. Nope,
So
100% with you on that, sir. 100% with you. And like I said, I know that there's some people that are looking at it going, "Oh, the VFL has a wild card." Well, no, they really don't. It's that
it's a top
to
10.
make the bracket make sense, it is kind of perfect. Play that 7-10 9-8 matchup, and it works because then you just chuck the two winners into the finals with the lowest of the seeds taking the 8 spot, the higher of the seeds taking the 7, and then you play your 8 man your 8 point playoff bracket that you have in Australia that many over here in America don't understand because of the double chance, but I actually think it does kind of give, and what it really does is it gives the advantage to the top 4 teams. So I think it's a wonderful thing. I love it. It gets confusing sometimes looking at it on paper, but it definitely is it. So now that we've went on our little
The,
rant
the,
there,
the
go
difference is,
ahead.
yeah, sorry, Donny. The difference is there in your playoffs in all your sports. Um, Obviously, apart from the NFL, we're talking the NBA and the MLB. You can play best of 5 and best of 7 series and that sort of stuff. The games are sort of lent to that. They play massive long seasons, and that's why they can be sudden death, because they're not really sudden death, because because the lower ranked team has got to beat the higher ranked team 4 times to knock them out, don't they?
Hmm.
So you've basically got 4 chances to get through to the next round out of the 7, or you've got 7 chances to get through to the next round. So
Yeah.
so it's not a double chance; it's a septuple chance, or whatever the word is you want to call
Yeah,
it.
it's more of the series. It's the way
Of
the
course,
sport
yeah,
the
and
way the
we
sport
can't.
is. I mean, I think a lot of people over here, especially we look at our college athletics where everything is one and done. I mean, there's no series. I mean, it's how many times have we seen NCAA tournaments where some of the best teams are out less than 2 weeks into the tournament, and it just makes all for the insanity sometimes, and why they call it March Madness is definitely one of the things there. But no, it's a funny test case for the AFL. I know that's what they're looking at. I don't like that they're I agree until Tazzy comes in, I don't think they should be discussing a wild card because as I've heard a few people say is like you're rewarding mediocrity at this present point. So I kind of get it. So
In 2025, it wasn't mediocrity, but
yeah.
in most other years it would be,
Mhm.
is what
No,
I'm saying. But
no,
I'm
completely
almost
agree.
certain that we will have a top 10 next year.
And it'll annoy the crud out of me. All right, let's move on. So we get to
Well,
the regular part of the
well,
finals, the top 8
we will
sides.
we
Go
will
ahead.
say we will say before you went on that Williamstown did finish 10th,
Yep.
and they knocked off Collingwood at Collingwood, and went through. So the 10th place team for the second time in the 4 years, 22, yeah, in the 3 or 4 years we've had the wild card, the 10th place team has gone through to the second week of the finals.
Yep. So, but unfortunately, they were greeted rather rudely in their next matchup. So we'll go through it. Brisbane start off the finals with a 20-point win at home at Brighton Homes Arena over Richmond, 87-67. The Footscray Bulldogs start off their finals campaign with an impressive smashing of the Frankston Dolphins, 105-25. The Southport Sharks come down to Melbourne and pull the upset with a 21-point win over the Hawks, 115-94. And the KC Demons say, Williamstown, congratulations, you 10 seed. Time for you to go home with a 132-56 point smashing of the Williamstown Seagulls. KC move on. KC moves on. The Brisbane Lions move on as Richmond and the Williamstown Seagulls both go home with now leaving 6 teams left at this point of the finals.
Yep, and it was the Sharks who turned the entire final series on their head, wasn't it?
Yep.
Southport finishing finishing third on the ladder, Box Hill second. They make a really good habit out of going interstate and winning the early finals, the Sharks. And they did it again here. The Hawks had their chances to really take the upper hand early on, but they weren't able to do it. They kicked 3-7 in the opening quarter. Southport kicked 4-3 and had a narrow lead. And yeah, they managed to hold that through till halftime. Still tight at three-quarter time. It was only 4 points. So it was 2 points at quarter time. Scores were level at halftime. It was 4 points at three-quarter time. And then the last quarter, or late in the third quarter, into the last quarter, the Sharks just went bang and they kicked, I think it was 7 goals out of 8 either side of three-quarter time, blew the match wide open, got themselves 40-odd points in front. The Hawks put a bit of respectability on the scoreboard late, but this was a statement performance from Southport. They had basically more of the football in every stats category. Jesse Joyce across half back was magnificent with 36 disposals. Jacob Dawson, as always, 29 and 7 tackles. Boyd Woodcock, 26, 9 tackles, 2 goals. They're the big three of the running brigade for the Sharks, and they got it done in style. And the Hawks, yeah, well, they'll be left to fight another day, but losing a home final once again, they've got a strong home ground advantage normally, but they've been turned over in the finals a couple of times recently, and that would be seriously disappointing for them, especially given that this is the last time that they'll be playing on their ground for at least 12 months.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely for sure. Let's move on, sir, to the semifinals. And I have to chuckle at this a little bit. Cannot wait to talk about this particular round as we see an absolute classic at Box Hill City Oval as the Hawks survive a rampant running Brisbane Lions by 3, 115, 112. And the one, sir, that I smiled so much because I called this in our tipping. And I said I was doing this purely out of I'm going with my heart here. I'm going with the unattached team. And damn it, I got it right. As Frankston knock off Casey by 11, 101 to 90. You have no idea how much back tap, how much tapping my own back on that one when I saw that result. I was so happy for the Frankston Dolphins because they started off the finals not so well against Footscray to bounce back to see Frankston Oval, Frankston Oval host a final. How awesome was that? An incredible round of football, 2 games, both under 2 goals. Incredible footy we were given here during the semifinal round.
Two semi-finals, 2 absolute epics, and don't worry, I was tapping myself on the back too, mate, because I had Frankston bouncing back as well. The big thing was there was originally talk that the AFL was going to schedule this game as a morning or a lunchtime final for broadcast purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, they didn't do that. They gave them their regular Saturday night time slot that they'd played all bar one of their home games this year, and it worked. There was the official crowd was 4,420, but I have no doubt in my mind that there were a lot more than that in that ground. It was heaving, and in the last quarter, it sounded like 40,000 when they were kicking the Dolphins over the line in what was an epic contest. I use the word epic a fair bit, but this one I was lucky enough to call it for Casey Radio, and it was it basically had everyone on the edges of their seats. The second and third quarters in particular, goal down at quarter time, 6 goals to 1 in the second quarter from Frankston really blew the game open. Then another 5 goals to 4 to hold Casey's comeback at bay in the last. The Demons kept coming. They came and they came hard. They got back within 5 points on a couple of occasions. And every time they did, Frankston, with that huge crowd behind them, answered. First Tommy Blamires, and then Bailey Lambert in his 50th game for Frankston swooped on a loose ball and then straightened up and banged it home from about 45 metres out in the dying stages. And as I said, I was in the grandstand at Frankston is a lot newer than it looks because it burnt down about 12 years ago and they rebuilt it in the heritage style. But the foundations were absolutely rocking where we were when Bailey Lambert kicked that goal. And yeah, their first game, their first final at Frankston since 2006, and to get the result, you could just see there were tears in the eyes of a lot of the long-time Frankston supporters to see that. 5 goals for Corey Ellison, 4 goals for Trent Minot, who actually hurt his ankle early on in the game and was sent down to full forward. He basically played out of the goal square for the rest of the night. And as I said, he kicked 4 goals and probably set up 4 others. So he was absolutely unbelievable on one leg, the captain.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson Voss, unbelievable in defence with 34 touches. Tom Blamires with 33. Darby Hipwell with 32. That rebounding running brigade was absolutely spot on. So yeah, that was a really heartwarming result, and nothing against the Casey Demons because they had an unbelievable year after I
Mm-hmm.
tipped them to finish 19th. I do put a rider on that I did say I could barely split everyone between 6 and 19, but they just came out down near the bottom and they basically proved me very, very wrong. But yeah, so the top 4 team, as is so often the case, proved why they made the top 4.
Yep.
And yeah,
100%.
in the other game, which I watched earlier on in the afternoon was just stunning as well. With the Brisbane Lions all but blew this match open in the third quarter. It was 2 points at half time, but they missed their opportunity, the Lions, and they'll be absolutely kicking themselves, and they'd probably miss, is the old joke. They kicked 4 goals, 7 to 0 in that third quarter. They had a 31-point lead at three-quarter time, and the Hawks coach, Zane Littlejohn, basically said to his team, you don't have to win it in the first couple of minutes. Take it right. Take the whole quarter if you need to and get it done. And then the finish is suitable to any final, any game of football ever. They flew home, the Hawks. They took the lead. It looked like they were home when Ned Reeves put them 9 points up at the 29-minute mark of the last quarter. The Hawks up by 9. They ended up kicking 9 goals to 3, the Box Hill Hawks, after not scoring in the third term. So 9 points up at the 29-minute mark. How are you going to stop that momentum? Well, Henry Smith kicked a brilliant set shot at 30 minutes 38, back to 3 points. Brandon Ryan, then who set up the Henry Smith goal, got set up by Henry Smith, and he put them back in front, put the Lions back in front, 32 and a half minutes. And, well, how do the Hawks answer that challenge again? Well, they did. Out of the middle, they bustled forward. Henry Huswaite burst out of a pack, and with about 6 Brisbane Lions players trying to tackle him, he drilled a 50-metre pass, absolutely spot on, and it almost hit Bodie Ryan between the eyes at the top of the goal square. That's how good a kick it was. And Bodie Ryan, a regular defender, was able to go back, and the siren sounded as the ball sailed over the goal umpire's hat. So what a day of football. And this season just continued to deliver.
Yeah, definitely for sure. It's as you say with that kick, it's the great announcer Dennis Committee used to say, centimeter perfect, centimeter
Oh,
perfect.
and this one was millimetre perfect.
Love it. Absolutely. Love it. Unfortunately, let's move on to the preliminary finals where unfortunately it was a little less dramatic, unfortunately, as Southport with an absolute domination of the Frankston Dolphins, 143-55, and the Footscray Bulldogs cement themselves into a grand final with an impressive 31-point win over the Hawks. I mean, for as much intrigue as we had in the semifinal, the preliminary final were a little less dramatic, shall we say.
Yeah, a little bit unfortunate, but the bruising and electric ways in which Frankston and Box Hill Hawks won their semi-finals, I would say, meant that they played their grand finals on that weekend to get through to the semis, while Southport and Footscray just sat back with their feet up and chewing on popcorn or whatever they were doing, and just watching their opposition smash the hell out of each other. And they came out and just responded. The Sharks were amazing, as they regularly are against Frankston. Unfortunately, they average over 140 points against Frankston, and they kicked it again, 21-17 to 8-7. It was a sad way for the Dolphins to finish, but I think it was about their level. They were the fourth best team in the competition. They weren't up to the top three just yet. They've never beaten Southport. They've never beaten Footscray, and they hadn't beaten Box Hill for 11 years. So in the cold light of day, they achieved everything I think they could have been expected to achieve. But Southport, what a performance. Hugh Dixon, 4 goals in the first 20 minutes, 8 for the game, 8 straight. He was unstoppable for the Sharks. Max Pescud was everywhere with 3. Josh Gore, well, what a day he could have had. He kicked 2 goals, 7 himself. So it was not something that hurt them because they were so far clear. But Jacob Dawson, 38 disposals. Zach Foote, 29 and a goal. Boyd Woodcock, 27 and a goal. Jesse Joyce, 23. Familiar names, aren't they? That they're experienced, they're hard bodies, they're strong, and they were just far too classy and too experienced for Frankston on the big stage. And in the other one, which I called for Casey Radio, as with the qualifying final, the Bulldogs won by as much as they needed to win by, and could have won by a lot more. They fought really hard, the Hawks, but they just didn't have the class on this day to go with the Bulldogs. Young Will Lewis, VFL lister, kicked 5 goals in his first preliminary final. Zach Walker kicked 4. I don't think he was a defender right up until just before the finals. I don't think he'll see the backline too much in future. Anthony Scott, 37 touches, 7 tackles. But Adam Treloar was best on ground with his 31 touches. His burst from the stoppage and his delivery just showed all the experience of 258 AFL games, and he was magnificent. And Jed Buslinger, 30 touches and 7 marks. So the best 2 teams in the end are through to the grand final, and we're set up for what should be a beauty.
We were given a classic at Icon Park as the Footscray Bulldogs get the premiership done with the win. Unfortunately, Southport again falling just that tiniest bit short in the season decider with a 10-point win, 89-79. Footscray get the premiership. And man, was Icon Park absolutely electric during this game. Back and forth game of football. Neither team wanting to give an inch, but the doggies just that little bit too good at the end.
Yeah, it was done early. I know it ended up 10 points, and I know they got level, which we'll talk about. But Dan Orgel, the captain for Footscray, he set the tone. Doesn't kick many goals, but he kicked the opening one of the grand final. And then they just went bang. And by the 20-minute mark of the first quarter, it was 6 straight to nothing in favour of Footscray. And it was 6 different goal kickers. It had come from everywhere. And we were really worried at this stage that it was going to be another beatdown. But Southport are made of sterner stuff than that. They forced their way back. They got to within 10 points midway through the second quarter. So they're right back in the game. But Footscray went again. They kicked the last 4 of the second term, re-established that 35-point lead at halftime. So it's a long way back. They've already come back once. They've got to come back and do it again. But then the rain poured down. And interestingly enough, it favoured the Queenslanders because, the weather might be a lot warmer up there, but it's also been a lot wetter. And they've played a lot more wet weather football than Footscray have throughout the course of the year. And they kicked themselves right back into the contest with what they kicked 4 goals, 8. Once again, left Daru poor kicking the goal that basically left them. They should have had a good lead. They should have had a good lead at three-quarter time, and they would have been hard to stop. But 4 goals, 8 to 1 point, which is the same sort of thing they did to Box Hill in their qualifying final. But they couldn't put them away. And Hawago Oya kicked the first goal of the last quarter, levelled the scores, and the Sharks fans were starting to think, maybe, just maybe, this might be our turn. Unfortunately not. The Dogs were able to answer again, and they answered from very unlikely sources in that last quarter. Billy Crofts kicked 2 goals from the midfield. He's a very, very good player, but just breaking out this season. But I think the one that really broke Southport's backs was Jed Buslinger, who in his 54th State League game kicked the second goal of his career with a set shot from almost 50 metres out, just inside the boundary. His first even shot at goal for the season. And it sailed through without the goal umpire having to move. It put them 18 points in front again. And despite the Sharks fighting the game out, the damage was done. And yeah, you can come back once. It's very hard to come back twice. It's damn near impossible to do it 3 times. And that's the way it turned out, unfortunately. Max Peskin finished with 5 behinds for the game. So he'll be ruining that. But I'm taking nothing away from Footscray. Cooper Craig Peters wins the Norm Goss medal, 28 disposals, 8 tackles and a goal. Billy Croft's 22 disposals, 6 tackles and 2 goals. So for 18 AFL listed players in Footscray's team, the best 2 on the ground for them were 2 of the 5 VFL boys. And the guy who set the tone, the first goal kicker, the captain, is another one of the 5. So that I always say premierships are not won by your AFL listers. They're won by your VFL boys, and that's exactly how it proved on this day.
Fantastic. Well, that is it, sir. That is both seasons wrapped up, done, over with, premierships handed out, cups and silverware going to be brought back to clubs. So let's wrap this season up. Some real quick kind of overviews. I just want to talk just a few things. We don't have to spend a ton of time on this. So we'll start with the women. We'll start with the best and fairest because I know that has been handed out, and I do not want to butcher this, so I'm going to go with you. The best and fairest for the VFLW went to Darabin Falcon this year, which I thought was an awesome situation because Darabin, they don't make the finals, but hey, they get their best and fairest.
And what a season it was from Ange Gogos. 36 years of age, or almost retired 2 years ago. They talked her into playing again last year, and she won the coaches award. Finished in the top 3 or 4 of the medal, and absolutely starred at 35. She almost retired again. They talked her into playing again. She won the coaches award again. And on this occasion, she absolutely dominated in the medal. She had it won with a couple of rounds to spare. The VFL calling off vote counts when the winner is locked in is another story that we could spend a bit of time on that I absolutely hate, but that's what they did. And yeah, at 35 and 36, to be doing that and averaging averaging close to 30 disposals a game. I think she was as stunned as everyone, as a lot of people were, that she won so easily.
Mm-hmm.
But it certainly wasn't a surprise that she won, because she's a superstar. And she was talking about retirement again, and I said, while Nicole Callanan is still there at the age of 42, you can't go anywhere. And
I love it.
she said, oh well, Nick's just retired. And I said, well, Nick's retired 3 times already.
That's awesome.
So until she's not out there,
Yeah,
you've got to keep going
yeah,
and get those.
I love those stories. That's fantastic. Seeing veterans like that continue to come back and play great football. Why not? Don't retire unless you absolutely have to. Unless you're
You're a
all your
long,
tickets.
long time retired.
Oh yeah, unless you spent all your petrol tickets. Come on, let's go. So all right, we'll do the one negative part of my questions. Biggest disappointment for you, so for you this year in the VFLW.
Um, having a bit of a scan down the list, it's really hard to find one. I think the best teams finished up near the top. The mid-range teams finished in the middle. The bottom teams finished down the list. If you had to pick one out, you'd probably pick out the Western Bulldogs. But they made the grand final last. They finished 11th in 2023. They charged up and made the grand final in 2024, but they lost 7 or 8 key players over the off season. So it was no real surprise that they slid back down the ladder again. They ended up finishing 9th with 5 wins. So they'd be very disappointed about that. Yeah, so that was probably the one. If you really held held a whip to me and said you've got to make a
Hmm.
selection. Um, but yeah, there was potentially a little bit going on behind the scenes as well that will come out over the next few weeks that will leave because it was told to me in confidence.
Hmm.
But we'll find out. We'll find out more down the track. But yeah, so for them to drop to 5 wins and 71% was probably the disappointment.
Yep. No, I'm 100% with you. Seeing the doggies fall out of the finals this year, it's a little disheartening. Again, as you said, there was some roster turnover. Sometimes it happens, but when you see a finals team completely fall out after being in the grand final the year before, is it's a little disappointing. But again, it's almost surface level. It's not like whole picture because I agree with you. I really don't think like Casey, Geelong, Carlton, we kind of expected them to kind of be roughly where they were. So I can't really sit there and then Darabin, again, they're fighting up a hill a little bit. So I really can't say that they're disappointing because I think they had quite the great season. So I'm 100% with you. I'll say it. Biggest surprise. What was your positive? What was your biggest surprise this season?
Sandringham for me. Finished second last season. They were the ones that made the big jump. They won their first 4 games of the season. I think they had a loss and then they had a draw, so they were 4-1 after 6 games. So to go from 2 wins or 3 that they had in 2024 to they stayed aligned with St Kilda, but they ditched the Southern Saints name and the St Kilda Guernsey, and they wore the Zebras jumper for the first time in their history, and it gave them a real spark. 8.5 wins for the season out of 14 games. Finished 4th on the ladder. Unfortunately, they weren't able to kick a goal in their first final, which they lost to Williamstown, and that's the second time in a row that they've gone goalless in a final after doing it as the Saints against Essendon in the 2022 decider, which was the last time they played in the finals. So it was a sad finish for them, but they're the ones that pleasantly surprised me. They were the biggest improver for the season.
hmm See, for me, again, maybe it's the little bit of the tinge of me is there have been Falcons 7-7. I mean, they were right there. Loved that it was a positive surprise to see them jump up the ladder to be fighting for finals. Fell just a little bit short, but you know what? Darn it, it's a good season for an unattached club that has had so many struggles over the previous couple of seasons. So for me, biggest surprise and a good thing is that maybe we're starting to see some positivity down at Darabin. Game of the year for you, sir. We'll do the entire season. I know it's not easy. Again, so many games to go through 14 rounds, an incredible final series. Game of the year for you, because I know mine, and maybe it's the recency bias, but it has to be the grand final, because I thought the grand final was
Yeah.
incredible. But I will say one of the ones that really I almost tipped was the Carlton win over Collingwood, where Keely Skipper gets the game winner after the siren on that one, and another incredible game of football. But man, it's like splitting hairs to try to pick a game of the year this year in the VFLW competition.
Oh, exactly. And that one in round 11 that you're talking about, an unbelievable game of footy. But Carlton did have their AFLW
AFLW, yep,
listed players
yep.
that day, and that told you exactly that was the game that showed that Collingwood was fair dinkum and that they were going to take a
hmm
fair bit of beating, even though they did lose that game after the siren to Keely Skepper, who ironically repeated the dose from exactly the same spot in an AFLW practice match
hmm
about 3 or 4 weeks later, just to prove it wasn't a fluke. But yeah, that was an unbelievable game of footy. Just trying to scan through quickly and see what I can spot to jog the memory a little bit before I do choose the grand final.
It's hard not to. The
Uh,
grand final was so good. A 6 point game back and forth between the two teams. It's really hard not to. So
yeah,
I know it's
Essendon
recency
turning
bias, but
over.
it's so hard not for me not to pick that.
Oh, exactly. Essendon turning over North Melbourne Werribee by 3 points in round number three.
Mhm.
That was an amazing result. Darabin coming from the death against Collingwood in round four when
Mhm.
they'd only kicked one goal up until the midway point of the last quarter, and then kicked two right at the end through former Magpie Monique Di Matteo to beat the Magpies by 3 points. That was a great result for them. Um, Casey kicked the first 5 goals against Essendon in round five, and then Essendon kicked the next 6 to win by a kick. So there's quite a few through there. You could say
So
the draw
many.
between Sandy and Port Melbourne.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I'm just trying to very quickly come through these games and and see what I can find.
It's not easy. Like
It's not
I've done that.
easy.
I've done that before, getting ready for these podcasts and sitting here going through each round and going, man, that was a good game. Oh, that was a good game. And then you're sitting there, like I said, you're splitting hairs so much with it.
The
But yeah.
the Western Bulldogs Essendon game that I called in round 14 as well
Mhm.
is the other one. The Dogs led by 23 points at three-quarter time. Season was basically over. If Essendon had lost that game, then both Darabin and Port Melbourne would have had a chance to take over them and make the finals. But the Bombers kicked 4 goals, one to no score in the last quarter, got over the Bulldogs, and basically eliminated 2 other teams at the same time. So that was an unbelievable game of footy. And then, of course, who can go past the grand final. So for me, it's between, in the games that I saw personally, it's between that Bulldogs Essendon game in round 14
Mhm.
and the grand final where North Melbourne was forced to come from behind to beat the Magpies.
So, if you
Making a
that's
short story long.
that's okay. That's okay. We can have multiple ones. It's our podcast. We can do what we want, okay? All right, let's have some fun. I always end with the wrap up of this one. What are you looking forward to next year in the VFLW competition? I'm interested on this one.
Well, for me, it's the arrival of Tasmania.
Mhm.
They're coming into the VFLW next year, which will give us 13 teams. So hopefully it'll give us 13 teams. We certainly hope that the 12 teams that we had will be around. There was one rumor. I don't think they're going anywhere, but there was one rumor that Darebin may not be standalone next year. There's talk of a potential alignment with Richmond, who pulled out of their Port Melbourne alignment during the last off season, but are keen to get back into it. Whether they now go on a line with Darebin or whether they come back in and give us 14 teams, who knows? I would love to see the same as we've got in the VFL. I would love to see the 4 northern teams bring their sides in, but not on that silly 5-game guest stint.
Agree.
Come in and
100% agree
play
with
a
you.
full season and stretch the season out to play more games. There is talk that the season might be pushed back again to more overlap with the AFLW.
Mm-hmm.
So the non-playing AFLW girls have got somewhere to play to push for their spot in the team. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do with the competition next year. But the number one for me is, can Darebin continue pushing up and take the next step? And how will Tasmania go in their first season in the competition?
Yep, you're reading my mind, sir. Those were both the two things that I had on my is the inclusion of Tassie, and then how will Darabin's progression be linear and continue to go up, or will we see a blip next year? The biggest question will be is, I said, I really want Darabin to continue to be successful. Having the Richmond potentially and having Tassie and
Absolutely.
Richmond both come in next year would be fantastic, because then you don't have the bye week every week with somebody getting a week off because you have an odd number of teams. So that would be incredible if Richmond goes, hey, you know what? We're just going to put a VFL side together as Richmond. We're not going to deal with this silly alignment thing, which I think would be fantastic. So we'll have to see. So that's the women's scene. We'll wrap that up with the bow. We'll jump to the men's. Same questions here. We'll start off with the JJ Liston medal, the best and fairest for this particular year, and the Southport midfielder Jacob Dawson comes home with the Chalkies on this one. Your thoughts on the JJ Liston medal winner?
Finally. Finally. Second in 2022. He was top 10 in 2023 and 2024. Should have been higher in those 2 years. Finally managed to get it done this year and become the first Southport player, the first player from a non-Victorian based club to win the Liston medal. Just a really good young fella, and he's only 25. He looks a lot older than that. He played a handful of AFL games for Gold Coast a few years ago, and it's one of those ones that never ceases to amaze me that he's not on an AFL list when, with all due respect to some of the guys that are being drafted and are playing AFL football out of the VFL competition, they are very good players, but to me, they're not Jacob Dawson.
Mm-hmm.
He's just an absolute warhorse and a bull at a gate, and any club that took a chance on him would definitely be rewarded in my mind. He averaged 34 disposals a game this year, Jacob Dawson, which is crazy numbers, and yeah, a thoroughly deserving winner. Riley Bonner from Casey was second. Not that most people would have realised, because they called the count off when Jacob was across the line, and Bonner flew home late to get that second spot. So he was fresh off an AFL list at St Kilda and controlled the half-back line for the Casey Demons. So yeah, congratulations to him as well. But we finally got one of the stars of the competition over the line.
Fantastic, fantastic. All right, again, like I said, the sad one, we'll get it over quickly. Biggest disappointment for you this year in the VFL competition this year?
And they will agree with me too. It's Port Melbourne for mine, and unfortunately for the Borough, they had a fair bit go wrong early on with the injuries to key players. A couple of their stars, they lost some close games. They kicked themselves out of some games. I think about 6 games they lost despite having more scoring shots than the opposition. So they'll really be left to rue that. They put together a very strong squad and a very strong coaching staff. I expect that Brendan McCartney and James Hird are very experienced and smart people. They will have seen throughout the course of the year what they need, and they will go and get it, and they will push Port Melbourne right up the ladder again next year. But I expected them to make the finals last year. They didn't. I expected them to make it this year. They didn't. It's time now for them to step up and produce and get back into September, because it's a 6-year drought, which I think is amazingly the longest in their history since they've played in the finals. So it's certainly not sitting too well with the Borough fans.
No, I'm gonna say mine, but mine is not disappointment in them. It's more of disappointing that the run ends and it's Werribee, only because what a run did they go on there for a while. I mean, and again, you look at it, it's the AF, so many AFL rosters are now littered with some of their stars that help them on this run where they get to a premier, they get to a grand final, fall short, get to win a premiership, have another great season last year. So for me, like I said, I see disappointment not in like them as a result, but disappointment that it's over. That the run that Werribee went on is over and they fell a little bit short this season. So that's kind of it, and it's a little weird interpretation of that, but that's how I kind of took it is that the run for Werribee, that incredible run that they had for about a 3-year span, unfortunately has come to an end because so many AFL squads picked the bones of that Werribee Tigers team. So, all right, sir, we'll go to the positive one. Biggest surprise. What team surprised you
Right.
this year?
What? Well, it's pretty hard to look past Frankston, isn't it? Um, I had them. I had them finishing around about the same or improving from last year when they finished 10th and won their first final. Um, I had them coming up to about 7th or 8th and getting a home wild card. So for them to finish in the top 4 was just magnificent. 12 wins, 5 losses, and a draw. Their best season, their most winning season since I think 2001. Even the years late in the 2000s when they made the finals, they made it with 10 wins and 11 wins. So to win 12 and a half, their best season in 25 years. Yes, they copped a couple of hidings in the finals, but they got a home final. They won that home final. They were magnificent. The Casey Demons, as I touched on earlier, I had them sort of at the bottom end of the even group, and I had Richmond at the bottom end of the even group as well, at 18th and 19th. I think that was just more a little bit of rolling the dice or throwing up all the teams and seeing where they fell in random numbers. But those two were the big risers from my tips. And Coburg's rise to almost make the finals was brilliant as well, and GWS making their first VFL final series. So quality stories right down the list.
Definitely 100%. You and I are reading off the same hymnal here because mine was the same thing. Frankston Dolphins make the top 4. Incredible, awesome. And Coburg getting off the schneid and coming so close to making finals were 2 awesome surprises. Seeing these unattached clubs go up against the mighty AFL squads and find a way to be successful and to make the finals, but for one to just fall short. Love those stories there. But my favorite thing is you say that they got hidings, but the 2 teams that they had their hidings to were the 2 grand finalists. So it may not be the results you wanted, but hey, you lost your 2 losses in the finals were the 2 teams that made the end of the year, the grand final there. So game of the year, sir. I know again, so many teams, so many games to go through. I will give you mine. And again, this is so much a homer. This is so much a homer pick. This is so much a end of the year. Damn it, the Frankston final. Frankston beating Casey, I can't not go by it because how awesome were the scenes at Frankston at Kinetic Stadium. I just can't go past it. I know there was incredible games. I thought the grand final was actually a pretty darn good game. There were some incredible finishes, some draws, all of that. I just can't go by it. I mean, Frankston getting a win in that final on home on turf. I just can't go past it. Frankston Casey for me, game of the year.
Very hard to go past it. Very, very hard to go past it, and I don't think I will go past it either. To be there and to call it and to have the crowd rocking, it was just an unbelievable game to go through. There were after the siren games right throughout the entire season.
Yeah.
I think I can't remember the last time there was so many, and just off the top of my head, I wouldn't be surprised if there was like 6 or 7 if I
Yeah,
went
that's what I
back
was thinking. There
and
was at
looked
least five or
them all.
six, at least, and then at least another three draws. So,
Yeah,
so many great
and
games to see.
even the
Yep.
draws were almost after the siren, that sort of thing. Um, I'm just quickly scanning through again to
Well, and the
try and
crazy part
refresh my memory.
is you can also even say the other semifinal on that same day, the Box
Oh,
Hill
yeah,
Brisbane Lions 115-112. I mean, it's hard to go by a 3-point thriller in the finals. So
on the siren as well.
exactly. It's I mean, you have 21
Um,
rounds of football, so many incredible games, and with 21 teams, it's just hard to
the
not
one
go
the one
through.
that I'm the one that I'm going to choose is obviously through my own eyes
Hmm.
to have seen it and called it, and that's going right back to round two. Sandringham and Richmond at Moorabbin at RSEA Park,
Hmm.
um, when the Zebras had complete control of that game. In the third quarter, they kicked 6 goals to 2. They had themselves a 23-point lead at three-quarter time. Richmond had 2 players out of the game with injury, and the Tigers just found a way. And I'm still, even though it was way back on the 29th of March, I'm still
Hmm.
trying to work out how they did it. And they came back. They didn't. They actually led the game with the first goal of the third quarter, or they led at halftime. They kicked the first goal of the third quarter, which put them in front by 8 points. It was dominated by Sandy for the next, uh, half a quarter or a quarter. But then Richmond just came back, and it was one simple mistake late in the game, a rushed kick out of the goal square, landed on the chest of acting captain Joel Garner, and after the siren from scores level, he put it through to give Richmond a 6 point win and break Sandy's hearts because, yeah, we knew that Sandy weren't going to win many games for the year. And so it turned out they ended up with 3 wins and 2 draws. So that one really shattered them. Um, not that they didn't answer, of course, because the biggest result, the biggest upset of the season, also belongs to Sandringham, and it came 2 weeks later when they went to the Mission Whitten Oval and knocked off Footscray,
Hmm.
who ended up winning the premiership. Some would say the Northern Bull Ants win over Williamstown
Yep,
when they
that's another.
came from 6 goals down at three
Yeah,
quarter time. So it's hard to overlook that. You've got to mention that one too.
yeah.
But Sandringham beating Footscray at Footscray when they were always, with all due respect, they were always going to be a bottom two team versus a top two team. That's the one that really jumps off the page at me, and that game might end up getting Jonah Campigli on an AFL list too after he
Mhm.
kicked 5 goals back then in round 4.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And then, like I said, we'll pull out the crystal balls. What are you looking forward to next year? Because I know we'll probably say a little bit of the same thing as Tassie coming in 2027. So coming in very, very soon. It'll be fascinating to see. I mean, for me, it's the progression of the standalones. Does Coburg come through? I really, and I see the scarf behind you in your visual there, hoping that everything works out with Preston because we do not want to lose this fantastic club. I know we really put out a call to people to try to help them out. I have not seen anything new. I wasn't going to try to address that because we wanted to talk about the finals there. But again, for me, looking forward to is the progression of the standalone clubs. How does it go? Tassie come in, and please do not lose the Preston Football Club.
Yes, exactly right. It's it's Tassie coming in. It's Sandringham with the breakup with St Kilda. So very much interested to see how they come back together. And the talk is positive down there. There is a fair groundswell of support around that club. A lot of people that have been waiting for this moment for 7 or 8 years and maybe even longer, and they're now going to get behind the Zebras. So good luck to them, and hopefully they go well. These are the big ones. These are the big ones. And if anyone's watching at the AFL, that monogram must be on the field in round one. Absolutely must be. The Preston Football Club. Yes, they've dug themselves into a really big hole over the past few years, and they're struggling on the field. They're struggling a little bit off the field, but they've got a new board in place, a new president with they've put all the plans and ideas in place. They just need a chance to execute them, even if it's give them a year, to see how the new board goes, and then maybe revisit it in 12 months' time. I've got full faith in Neil Howard and his team that they'll be able to at least show some positive signs off the field, even if it's still another tough year on it. And if anyone, and if they keep them in, if they keep this monogram in the game, and anyone that is on the VFL listed players at AFL clubs, that you might feel frustrated that you've been forced out of teams when AFL players are coming back, get over to Preston, play every week, put your best foot forward, keep this proud club alive. 144 years of history. We can't lose it. So please listen. Please listen to everybody who has football's best interests at heart, AFL. This team has to be there next year.
100% love it. Absolutely love it. Well, Brandon, that is it. That is season 2025 wrapped up with a little bow. It is done, put under the Christmas tree for this particular year. It has been another incredible year. Like I said, huge congratulations to the Footscray Football Club on the men's side and the North Melbourne Werribee Kangaroos on the women's side. Congratulations on your premiership. Brendan, again, your work incredible. It is so much fun to sit down and work with you at least once a month, talking the wacky and wild is the VFL and VFLW.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Donny. And as I say on regular occasions, thank you so very much for helping take our great game to the rest of the world. I know you work absolutely tirelessly covering our league, the Sandful, the Waffle, the AFL, the AFLW, absolutely everything. It must feel like you're hardly ever away from that microphone you've got sitting in front of you. But just know that it is very much appreciated here in Australia, and we certainly hope that it's very much appreciated over there in America as well.
Well, let's just safe to say I have coworkers over here that think I'm absolutely insane when I write out all of the games that I have to try to keep track of on a weekly basis. Once all of the competitions get started, it makes, like I said, sleep deprivation is my friend from March till December. I know it when it comes to it. It's always so much fun. But again, I love this sport. I love covering it. I love keeping track of it. It keeps me up. It keeps me up at night. It makes me go insane sometimes, but you know what? I know what? It is it is a labor of love. I truly, truly appreciate it. It's so much fun. So that is it. That is done. That is season 2025 for the VFL and VFLW done. VFL Vantage will take a break now until next season. We will be back. Our next show for the VFL and VFLW will be to preview 2026, which I cannot wait. So, Brandon, thank you again so much. That is going to do it for this episode of Donnie's Disposals, and we'll be back with more footy coverage very, very soon.